Hello, and welcome to a CGI conversation about AI and emerging technology in Canada. I'm your host, Derek Marinos. Today, we're exploring how AI is transforming the software development lifecycle in the insurance industry. Insurers are under intense pressure, claims are rising, risks are growing, regulations are complex, and customer expectations keep climbing. Traditional development cycles simply can't keep pace. AI is changing that, accelerating delivery from months to weeks, improving quality, strengthening compliance, and reshaping how insurers build and operate technology. Joining me today are three CGI experts: Tarun Deharia, Industry Insurance Lead; Chris Jurin, Head of AI and Emerging Technologies; and Guillaume Brinsin, an expert in AI and immersive technologies. Gentlemen, I'd like to dive right in and set the stage and look at what's driving the shift. First of all, Tarun, let's start with you. And what are the top pressures you are seeing that make the traditional software development lifecycle unsustainable for insurers today?
Insurers are getting squeezed from all sides, and that's what makes the traditional SDLC hard to sustain. There are a few factors that I want to talk about. First is the business environment. That's moving way faster than it used to. Right, a big storm can hit one day, and suddenly claims volume rises through the roof. The insurance systems are expected to scale instantly for that. That's very tough. Fraud, for example, that's getting smarter, because of all the online interactions. We need to be careful about that. And the rules keep changing. There was IFRS 17, there's privacy, new AI guidelines happening. So models, rules, reports all need to be updated much more often. That's about business environment. Second is customer expectation. You and I, as customers, we want quicker answers. We want better digital experiences. We are spoiled with so many different experiences digitally. Everyone is seeking our attention. So we expect that from our insurance companies as well. And then products that should be tailored to what I need, what you need. Usage-based insurance or real-time underwriting. But then, a lot of insurers around the world are running on old systems. They're not built for rapid change. Third is competition. Competition's heating up. There are a lot of insurtechs in the market today. Big tech players. They're launching new digital experiences. And that raises the bar for everyone else. On top of that, we're looking at cyber risk going up. We're looking at talent in short supply. We really need good engineers, good architects today. So when you put all of that together, long linear development cycles just don't fit anymore. Like the business is changing too quickly and everything today is connected. So for a traditional SDLC to keep up with what insurers need today,
Yeah.
that's going to be tough.
Thank you, Tarun. Chris, Tarun mentioned speed and complexity. From a technology leadership perspective, why can't insurers rely on that 6 to 18 month development cycle anymore?
Yeah. So like the way the world's been changing, the way that we're seeing the needs of insurers and as Turin was talking about our customers as well changing, you can't wait 18, 12, or even 6 months to make those changes. It's like trying to steer a ship where you turn the wheel and 6 months later the rudder reacts. And to me, this isn't something that everyone wanted, right? People like organizations don't want to wait 18 months to make a change. It's because of the difficulty we have from the way that we work, the way we've worked in the past, that has caused that to happen. And even what Tarun was saying, the needs weren't always there to make a change today and be as quick as we needed to be before because of competition is one thing, but also just the way technology is changing at a lightning speed. Like it's crazy when I think to where, I've been in different emerging tech spaces, right? Doing stuff with agile ways of working, with cloud, and now with AI. Um, the way that things change from month to month, week to week, day to day is just not allowing us to wait that long. From a technology standpoint, part of that's the models. Like new models are always coming out, new areas that people want to focus in on, the need to retrain the different systems. And that's a big change that we're seeing, that we can't just wait and set something in production and see what happens. Drew, and you touched on fraud, like with being able to leverage AI and fraud and cyber risks, we need to be able to react faster to keep ourselves safe, but also just to stay ahead of competition. Competition are leveraging some of these tools and fintechs and others. Like if you want to keep up with them, you need to be able to do that. And sometimes it feels safer having these long release cycles. We make sure we get everything in there, but all we're doing is accumulating risk when we do that. We have risk compounds. And the longer we wait to release something, to test it and get into that build, measure, learn cycle, the more risk we're really applying as part of that. So the need to be fast to kind of shorten that development cycle is there from a customer expectation, like Tarun said, a or overall technology changing and risk, but also from just staying safe in a cyber and model standpoint.
Thank you, Chris. Guillaume, in a recent article you published on CGI.com, and I encourage everybody to have a look at it, you warn that focusing on AI and on development alone isn't enough. You frame this as a whole life cycle transformation rather than just a development acceleration exercise. Please unpack for us why this shift from a narrow view of development acceleration to an end-to-end life cycle, focus is more critical for organizations.
It's not a collection of independent activities. So let me illustrate. Say you achieve a 20% productivity gain in development through AI-powered code generation. So that sounds great, but here's what actually happens. Your developers are now producing code faster, which flows into QA. And if QA is still manual, you've just created a bottleneck. So testing becomes your constraint. Then even if you accelerate testing, the code needs documentation, and that's still manual, that's your next bottleneck. So each phase produces outputs that become inputs for the next phase. So a well-structured document architecture created by AI facilitates better development, which produces more testable codes, which accelerates QA, which enables faster deployment. So the quality of each output directly conditions the performance of every downstream phase. This is why I call it a systemic transformation. If you only optimize development, you are essentially speeding up one part of the assembly line while leaving the rest manual. So the gain evaporates at the first manual hands-off. The real opportunity and the real challenge is transforming the entire flow. So when every phase has stabilized AI workflows, you create a multiplier effect. Superior inputs propagate through the entire cycle and compounding gains at each step. So what I'm saying is that the biggest risk in deploying AI is deploying it partially.
Interesting point of view. And when you talk about deploying AI, let's transition the conversation now to what AI is actually delivering today in the industry. And Tarun, I'd like to begin with you. You know, in a recent article you published on CGI.com, you've shared some compelling examples of real return on investment, like a 45% reduction in test preparation time and building a claims portal in 6 weeks instead of 5 months. What do these results tell us about how AI is changing the game in software delivery today, especially in a regulated industry like insurance?
Thank you, Derek, for asking that question. What's really compelling is the impact we are seeing across the value chain, the insurance value chain. I see that these are more anecdotal today. They are not widespread, and I think that's where we'll see the market go. But today, the examples that I talk about, and there are several others, they really show that AI is taking a lot of the busy work out of the SDLC and actually giving time back to the teams. So much of software delivery in insurance today is still manual. Updating rules, checking underwriting logic, reviewing long documents, writing and maintaining test cases. So when you bring AI into these steps, work that used to take days or weeks can be done much faster. That lets teams focus on decisions that really need human judgment. So in the wider market, what we are seeing today, there are some large insurers in Europe, in Asia, who have rolled out tools like GitHub Copilot to all of their developers. So AI acts as like a pair programmer, helping write code, suggest fixes, even generate documentation, something that most engineers do not like to do. Others are using AI-powered testing platforms that automatically are creating, updating test scripts, regression steps when the UI changes instead of having people do that by hand. We are seeing that impact firsthand today at CGI. So you rightly mentioned for a large life insurer, we helped modernize their testing and QA with AI-based Navi proprietary CGI tool. The test prep time dropped by about 45%. They actually saved 58 to 60 days across 11 projects running in parallel. And even the test coverage moved up to about 70 to 85% range. Just as important, the QA team could actually shift their focus from repetitive checking and spend more time on automation and improvements.
Hmm.
In another case, we built a digital claims portal that went live in 6 weeks, you rightly said, instead of 5 months. That kind of speed really matters when you're dealing with severe weather events, regulatory changes, or just customers expecting faster service. Uh, but mind you, it's not just about speed. AI can spot gaps earlier. It can apply rules more consistently than humans can. So there's less rework later, right? So there is a strong contribution to quality as well here. But humans are still in charge. They review, validate, and make the final calls. So while AI is a game changer, and we see that more and more often, we are looking at insurers adopting AI for more speed, better quality, and more focus on high value work, and still keeping human judgment at the center, of course.
Thank you, Tarun. Guillaume, I do want to get your perspective first, and then Chris, I'll come to you for the executive perspective as well. Guillaume, when you hear about radical acceleration like this, what's happening behind the scenes? What is AI doing differently across documentation, QA, and architecture that enables these results?
Yeah, great question. And I guess Tarun already talked about this, but each phase leverages AI in fundamentally different ways. For documentation, AI maintains living documentation that updates in real time as code changes. This means practically that developers always have current information at their fingertips, which makes maintenance easier, deepens system understanding, and also accelerates onboardings for new team members. For QA, AI generates comprehensive unit tests, creates standardized test cases, automates execution across the entire code base. And tasks that used to take teams weeks now happen continuously, which means we are catching bugs earlier and ensuring consistent quality throughout. Now, about architecture, this is where AI remains underutilized. Most companies, including many that I've observed, haven't cracked how to integrate AI into architectural design and planning. This is currently the weakest link in the chain. And this is exactly why I said earlier that partial AI adoption is an issue, because this phase is the weakest one, and it can become quite easily our bottleneck.
Thank you, Gail. Chris, you speak with executives about the business value here. This is vital and it's critical. When they see these kinds of results, what questions do they ask next? And what do they tell you about where the ROI comes from and what still requires critical investment?
Yeah. Um, so, you asked a couple things there. We'll talk about the success Tarun was talking about, where bringing a ton of value to the organization in an area. The first thing, obviously, that every exec asks is, okay, I want more of it. How do I scale? POC first run, that's easy. Scaling across my organization, that's hard. It's hard to scale these things and make it work across different teams, different product lines, different lines of business across the organization, partially because different teams act differently, you have different relationships going on, but even just the way that teams work within some of these larger organizations is totally different. So you can't just take a cookie cutter approach and say, okay, do it exactly the same. But it's all about kind of what, and Guillaume, you were talking about this, and about how do you kind of do this across the SDLC. And when I think about measuring that ROI, the biggest thing is exactly what you were saying there. It's not just one part. We need to compress the entire SDLC to make that overall end-to-end process faster if we want to see real results as part of this. Because, like you said, it's like, and it's funny because I come from an agile way of working, done agile transformations in my past, and something people love to talk about was a book called The Goal, which talks about the theory of constraints. It's about in a factory making one spot really, really fast just creates a new bottleneck down the line. And that's exactly what happens if we don't look at compressing the entire SDLC. So we need to understand how we do that and look within our process to have opportunities to remove those bottlenecks, because we can say, yeah, we for sure, you make dev faster, QA is going to be there, but there can be other areas that we didn't even think of. And if we don't have a way to look into that and understand that, that's where we're going to see challenges if we just take a bit more of like a one by one approach and don't have that systems thinking approach across the entire SDLC. Another one that comes in from a really good return that we start to see is better decision velocity because we're delivering faster. Now we can actually test things faster than we ever could before. Before we were constrained, like we said, 18 months, 12, 6 months, whatever. If we can improve that, compress that, I can test things a lot faster. I can check if things are working. I'm more open to making smaller changes, understanding where that is and rolling it out to a larger part of the organization because I have that opportunity that I never had before. So we're seeing these great opportunities, but one of the things we're talking, where do we need to do investment, right? So, okay, cool. POCs are scaling, we're compressing that SDLC, but what doesn't work is if we take the old governance, apply it on top, and expect that to work at scale. That's a huge bottleneck I'm seeing across organizations that the pipeline just gets more and more risk because we don't have the guardrails in place. We don't have the approval process, the human in the loop, validation across these things. So we need to invest in our people. We need to invest in not just the teams that are doing the work, but also the supporting teams like our risk, legal, compliance. Those teams need to understand how these changes are happening and what that means for them. And our own teams that we have in the SDLC side need to understand their roles are changing. This isn't just about speeding up what you're doing today. The way of working is totally changing. So it's about asking first when it starts working, how do we scale? As we scale, understanding where that ROI is going to come from compressing the SDLC, but not just doing it, you know, haphazardly and not just hoping for the best, but actually investing in the right teams and measuring where it matters across the entire SDLC, taking that systems thinking approach across everything.
Yeah, and it's a great segue, Chris, to our next segment of our conversation right now. We're talking about operationalizing all of this. And let's talk about that. For a carrier ready to begin their AI journey, what should the first 90 days look like, Chris?
Yeah. So one thing I'll tell you what the first 90 days shouldn't look like is we're not trying to prove that AI works. Nobody cares. Like I don't care. Again, I'm head of AI, love AI, I do, but I don't care if it works. I care if it drives value. So that's number one is understanding how we're going to measure that value, really even just defining what value means. Tarun, you're talking about saving time in testing. If compressing the test time is valuable, then let's measure that. If it's going to be reducing the number of defects that get to production, that's another measure that we want to look at. If it's going to be not just doing running test cases, but giving time for exploratory testing that we never could do before, like what matters to you has to be defined up front. So right away, understanding what that is, and then finding those bottlenecks and removing them. And not just removing them because we want to go faster, but looking at it from an organizational standpoint, because I do want to scale this out. After 90 days, I want to have a process that's repeatable, that I can start to roll out across lines of business, across different teams, and start to create that build, measure, learn faster and faster. So if you're able to get to that repeatable process that you're comfortable saying, here's how, what worked for another team, what's going to work for other teams, and kind of, we'll say like extrapolating or generalizing, I guess, that approach after 90 days after a successful pilot, you're on the right path. But don't forget about the guardrails. Like that's something that I mentioned it just a second ago, but like I'm sure people have forgotten being like, oh yeah, let's go faster. We can do this. We can scale. Like what's going to happen across that? where data can and should be used. Is there any residency challenges that might be there if my code has PII or different things that are part of this? If my testing, I'm leveraging production data in some way, is it cool to send this cross borders, or does it have to stay within? What constraints do I have so that I can understand what those are and work across an organization? Because once we start going at scale, these risks start to compound across that. So it's not just about making individual people faster, not just making single applications faster. After 90 days, we should be looking at the organization and having an approach on how we can really move that forward.
Yeah, and Tarun, I mean, Chris kind of laid out those early steps here. Briefly, from your work with clients, what's the biggest mindset shift insurers need to make at the start?
So, Derek, actually, the answer lies in your question itself. From what we've seen with the clients, the biggest shift at the start isn't actually about technology. It's about mindset. We've been working with a couple of CIOs in the past, and I think the biggest challenge that they are facing is they have a lot of smart engineers, smart program managers, etc. Right, but they are facing the challenge of adoption, and it's the mindset that is a challenge here, right? So teams need to move from seeing AI as a threat to seeing it as a helper. And the best way to do that, just the way Chris said, the best way to do it is to show very real, very practical value. For example, when a testing team sees an AI tool write most of the regression test cases for them, they suddenly get a few hours back, and the fear drops pretty fast. Or even when a claims team sees that AI pulls lots of details out of the long documents, the tons of documentation that insurance companies typically have, they start to view AI as a teammate and not a replacement. They start seeing value. So that's why we're always suggesting starting small, in low risk areas. You get quick wins, people build confidence, and then you can scale. Just the way Chris talked about it. So you can expand, you can measure the ROI at each step, and that continues to build more and more confidence, and that mindset shift happens.
Yeah.
So that mix of small starts, clear guardrails, and visible value is what will let insurers move past pilots.
Yeah, and
Interesting.
maybe just
And
just to jump in.
yeah, go
So
ahead.
Tarun, you're talking about how to reduce fear. Something that, and I know that one of the examples you were talking about, we actually looked at doing this, right? Like, well, as we scaled it, let's find the people who are getting value, and let's prop them up. Let's bring them forward to the teams and be like, hey, here's what I did, here's the value I saw from it, and here's what it's letting me do now. So it's not just some thing that's happening over to the side where people, we hear about different things, we make up stories in our heads, we assume what it's going to be. Let's actually talk about what it has been and bring real stories from within your organization. Like, that makes it so much more real, so much faster. People start looking for that. And then also, we are celebrating the actions and the behaviors we want. We're creating that culture within our teams of showing who's using and moving in the way where we want to move and we want to see. And, celebrating those behaviors is a great way to get that mindset kind of going across teams.
And driving that proof forward is really important to helping that culture really grow, Chris. And that's interesting insight. Guillaume and Tarun kind of alluded to it, and I liked what Chris brought there because starting small makes sense, and you can begin to build those success stories and drive that forward to help grow the culture. But how do organizations avoid experimenting in silos? To Chris's point, too, to kind of avoid that and instead build workflows that scale across the full SDLC.
Yeah, that's exactly the challenge most organizations face. Starting small is absolutely the right approach, but the key is being strategic about how to start small. The critical insight is that you need to think in terms of stabilized workflows rather than isolated experiments. What I mean by that is when you pilot AI in one phase, let's say documentation, you are not just testing a tool. You are establishing templates, defining standards for deliverable, and implementing quality controls mechanism that can be replicated. So here's what prevents siloed experimentation. It's design for interdependence from day one. Remember that each phase produces outputs that become the input for the next phase. So even your pilot should consider, what does the next phase need from this one? Is your documentation pilot generates real-time docs? How do you feed these into QA or maintenance workflows? So you start small, but you start with interoperability in mind. You establish one standardized workflow, prove it works, then replicate that approach across other phases, ensuring they connect seamlessly. That's how experiments become scalable transformation.
That's well said. Thank you. Gentlemen, going to move on to our final segment here, and I want to look down the road, look into the future. Agents and hyper agile organizations. Chris, I'd like to kick this conversation off with you, actually. From an operations and resilience standpoint, what does this next phase of AI mean for reliability, uptime, and customer experience?
Yeah. So when I think of AI systems compared to traditional systems, traditional systems, they fail in predictable ways, right? You give an input, it fails the same way every single time. We have a problem, then we can actually repeat it, go back, test it, find the challenge, RCA, or a root cause analysis, fix it and go forward. But AI systems often fail probabilistically, right? So if we're bringing these models in, if we're bringing our way of working in, it's not the same every time, right? That's how this works. And again, people sometimes get a little bit afraid of AI models when we talk about how the same question you get, or you ask the same question, you don't get the same answer. True also here, right? If we record this podcast tomorrow and you ask the same questions, we're going to go down different paths because, I had something different for breakfast. I saw something new on the news. I'm thinking of something else. I had a different meeting. Like just those types of things is how our brains work. That's how these models work. But that makes it harder for our people to support these, right? We start seeing model drift. We start seeing data quality changes. We see output changes. New models come in and we get a whole new result from what we used to do when we were doing this from an SDLC or even just an overall system standpoint. Um, so we need to shift from just correctness and shift towards it being correct. The outputs being what we need, consistency, explainability is another big one that we're needing to have. So these customer facing decisions can be understood as part of what we're doing. So if we don't do that, then we're going to have slower systems. And if we just accelerate our entire delivery, but we slow down in the recovery side, the customer experience actually will get worse. Even if we're releasing all these great things, it doesn't matter because customers are only going to see challenges and failures that don't help them in their overall way of interacting with our organizations. And Tarun, you were talking about that. The expectations of our customers is both, right? I want I want fast changes, I want a great experience, and I also want it to work perfectly every single time. And that's something I'm seeing. It's not a simple answer. We need to take that into consideration as we think about the support going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Chris. And Guillaume, you've written about some of this, about AI agents orchestrating workflows and the model context protocol enabling tools to talk to each other to help accelerate things. How will these change the software development lifecycle over the next few years?
I think we are looking at a fundamental shift in how the SDLC operates from a series of hands-offs to a continuous intelligence flow. AI agents eliminate the friction points. So today, transitioning between phases require constant manual intervention, exporting specifications, reformatting data, re-entering context, and agents orchestrate complete workflows autonomously, coordinating technical specifications, stakeholder validation, and transformation into development stories. Of course, with human intervention at critical approval milestones. The model context protocol solve interoperability. Each tool currently operates in isolation. MCP enables tools to exchange not just data, but context and capabilities. Your project management tool will share specification directly with architecture tools, which transmits diagrams to code generation solutions and then preserving contextual richness at every transition. So the combined effect is a fluid ecosystem where information flows naturally. Tasks are orchestrated intelligently, and humans focus exclusively on high-value decisions like strategic architecture, regulatory compliances, and critical security reviews, for example. And I believe we'll see the SDLC transform from a sequential process with bottlenecks into an orchestrated system where AI manages the flow and humans govern the direction, the shift from automation to intelligence orchestration.
Herein the value that we've been talking about that the
Yeah,
industry
exactly.
desperately needs. Thank you, Guillaume, for that. And Tarun, mindful of the clock, of course, briefly, when software development lifecycle acceleration becomes the norm, not the differentiator, what shifts for insurers strategically?
Really. So, when all that friction is removed, as Guillaume was saying, and fast delivery becomes normal, the real edge lies in how do you use that speed. If two insurers can both release changes every week, the winner is one that quickly rolls out a new coverage, a flood coverage, for example, after a big storm, or fixes a step in their claims process based on real customer feedback. So the strategy really shifts from delivering quickly to delivering better outcomes continuously and safely.
Thank you, Tarun. Okay, mini roundtable before we close the show. I want, it's prediction time, and where will AI deliver the biggest advantage in the insurance industry by 2027? Chris, let's start with you.
So first, Derek, appreciate you not doing the 5-year prediction because I don't think in 2020 I would have had any one of my predictions be right. So at least, so thank you, appreciate that.
You're welcome. It could have been 5 minutes.
Yeah,
with
exactly,
AI.
exactly. Yeah, what tomorrow? Okay, so 2027. Like to me, when we think about SDLC efficiency and resilience, like what I think of is the biggest advantages are going to come from insurers that use AI to continuously adapt and update their software and operations together. It's not just going to be one or the other because if you need to dramatically improve that delivery speed while improving your operation resiliency. If you have one without the other, just because we're faster but we're not more resilient, that's not going to matter. People won't be happy. It won't make a difference in your customers' lives and in your operational effectiveness. So it won't be just about building faster, but recovering faster, reacting faster, and AI will really. I see that being the organizations that are doing that are going to be the ones who win.
Okay, Tarun.
I think the biggest advantage from AI for insurers will show up in advisor and customer experience. We are in conversation with several insurers today itself, and they are all thinking about how do I improve my advisor experience? How do I improve my customer experience? So we'll see more agentic AI that can quietly handle grunt work in the background. Things like reading documents, pulling data from different systems, getting a case ready for underwriting or claims. So instead of an advisor chasing paperwork for days, AI does most of the prep, and advisor spends time explaining options and giving real advice. So for customers like you and me, that means quicker answers, fewer back and forth emails, smoother journeys, as long as all of this is done with the right guardrails and human oversight.
And it's a better customer experience at the end of the day. Human beings will benefit from this. They'll be able to connect better with the content that's being presented to them and make more informed decisions, which adds value to the industry. Guillaume, a final quick prediction
Yeah,
from you.
I guess the biggest advantage will be in architectural design and technical decision making. The phase that's currently underutilized will become AI breakthrough area, where AI agents autonomously generate system architectures, evaluate trade-offs, and simulate implementation impacts, creating a cascading quality improvement throughout every downstream phase of the SDLC.
Thank you. So here's the takeaway. Insurers are under real pressure and traditional development cycles can't keep up. AI isn't just speeding things up, it's changing how software gets built across the entire lifecycle. We talked about what's possible today, how to adopt AI responsibly, and what's coming next. My thanks to Tarun, Chris, and Guillaume for their great discussion today. To learn more about CGI's AI capabilities, including our enterprise AI frameworks, please visit CGI.com. I'm Derek Marinos. Thanks for listening, and we'll speak with you next time for another CGI conversation. Bye for now.